clock upstairs is different. Yeah,
This one says 103 on the phone.
okay.
So, Robin Gasso, you think would be in this pile?
I don't know.
Card incorrectly? We didn't want to mess with your card, so. All right, welcome back. Thank you. I hope everybody had a nice lunch. I know I'm feeling a lot better after eating something. Okay, so we are going to go back to public comment.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Michelle Wygant, followed by Willie Harp, Kim Foreman, Rudy Jarez. You can take either microphone, please.
Hi, Michelle Wygant. I live on 130th Trail in 71st Place North. And my truck and trailer are not commercial, they're for livestock. And I'm falling under that category, which is not fair. So I think you guys need to look into what exactly weighs that much and size of the trucks and the size of the trailers, because they're not all used for commercial. What is the actual law weight on it? Does anybody know? 12? 12? Okay. Yeah, a lot of things weigh 12 and they're not, no. And then responding to the comment of all the trucks, dump trucks and whatnot flying down the roads and hitting a child. It's not them, it's the UPS drivers and the FedEx and the Amazon drivers that tear up our roads out there. And speed. And also about parking. Somebody made a law about not allowed to park anything in front of your house except your vehicle. So I got cited for having my boat up there, but on my property, I can't park it anywhere else because I have a well, a septic, and a drain field. So I don't know if that can be looked into or not. Yeah. That's it.
Commissioner Baxter, you recognized.
Lisa, if you wouldn't mind just answering her question, what's the current code?
It's 12,500 for the vehicle. However, if you have a commercial agriculture operation, you can have a larger vehicle. And as far as the boat in the front, the change in 2019 affected the recreational vehicles and the boat parking, and applied the same rules in the urban suburban tier as in the rural areas. But and that's not part of the discussion today because that didn't seem as pressing as the commercial vehicles. But we are looking at going back to the pre-2019 rules on the RV and the boat storage to like what it was before.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, your name and address, please.
My name is Kirsten Roth, and I'm glad you're able to listen to me. I have a neighbor who moved in, very nice guy, but he had three trucks taxed. And he was fined. He was told he had to go somewhere else. His realtor told him, no, there's no problem. And I didn't think there was any problem either. I ride for the sheriff's office. I volunteer my time since 2005, looking around the neighborhood, reporting down lines, helping accident victims, which I have had to do. And I look at the trucks that are around there, and I don't pull it out in my mind that this is awful, that this is not neat and cared for. You know, there are exceptions, very few. And I don't understand why they can't go there if they're taken care of. The past code in 1991 was confused, and it was confusing. It said that AR was exempt from residential parking. So why did he lose his vehicles? Because even the code enforcer was confused about what it was he was supposed to enforce. So something needs to be done, a decision needs to be made. I don't see a problem out there for me, because when I ride everywhere, it's North Loxahatchee. I've ridden all the way down to 60th Street. And I don't find a problem with having the trucks there. They pull in, they take care of them, they take care of their yards. And thank you for listening to me. Take care.
And I like your t-shirt, by the way.
No, thank you.
Willie Harp, Rudy Yares, Ashley Davis, Sharon Waite.
Good afternoon, all. I'm Sharon Waite, 15058 75th Lane North, Loxahatchee. There isn't much I can add about the deletion of the wording shall not and adding shall to the AR. I'd like to go back to the previous 2019 code and leave it there, and leave the designation to what it was before then. I speak for all of those who couldn't attend today that want the original designation reinstated also. There's a certain tyranny in what was done there. We don't want a system like Acme Improvement in Wellington, driving around like little Gestapos. As James Madison stated, our government is instituted no less for the protection of the property than the persons of individuals. He believed that there was an excessive power. Where an excessive power prevails, property of no sort is duly respected. No man is safe in his opinions, his person, his facilities, faculties, or possessions. And that's my statement, and thank you today.
Thank you. Sir?
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thanks God for one more day, and thank you all for allowing us to speak in behalf of our living area in Loxahatchee. I'm speaking for myself, but I'm also speaking on behalf of all the residents from Loxahatchee, which we all are here for one purpose.
And your name, sir?
I'm sorry, my name is Rudy. You can call me Rudy, but my name is Rodolfo Juarez, so they call me Rudy as a nickname because of all the R's involved in there.
Thank
But
you,
you can call me
Rodolfo.
Rudy. Anyways, I moved to Loxahatchee in 2021 after living in West Palm Beach in Westgate area for 11 years. Have a small landscape business, and I was having some troubles keeping my trucks, my 2 small trucks in West Palm Beach in Westgate area, so I moved to Loxahatchee. But moved there because of, code enforcement told me it was okay to move my trucks there and to buy land there and everything. And all of a sudden, it's not okay. So I don't see why in one way it was okay and in the other way now it's not. We all moved there for a reason, either because of the space, because of the peaceful, because of we like the the open areas, or because of our business. All I ask is for you to put in your heart and to put yourself in our shoes. We don't have a salary like people like you working in offices. We go and search for our salary. And our way to do that is using our trucks, using our, different ways to make our living. And that's how we raise our families. And so we certainly appreciate if anything can be done to keep our trucks. And I don't know many trucks. I own 2 small Isuzu trucks like the one you guys put in the, so I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ashley Davis. Address is 16973 West Derby Drive, Loxahatchee. I am the owner of a 3-acre horse farm where I teach and train, have an agricultural exemption, have been established since 2016. I am accumulating $300 a day in fines since November of last year. On April 20th at 6 p.m. at the Vista Center, Miss Lisa Amara asked me to email her so we could get my case closed out. I had numerous calls into Buckley Ramsey, numerous emails. I have a bunch into you, Lisa, and I went down on Monday after leaving Animal Care Control because I had, again, another anonymous call on my property with my horses.
Is this in regards, stop it.
Yes.
Stop it. Stop it. Ma'am, is this in regards to the truck parking?
Yeah, it's everything because agriculture is getting swept up in this too. I'm basically the gray area of a Venn diagram. So one of the anonymous complaints was on a horse trailer truck that I had on the property. So yeah, I have the property up for sale. I had a buyer last year. Code enforcement was sitting in the driveway, which on Google Street View, which killed my sale. I am just asking that my very little violation, since it has been brought to my attention many, many times over, Code Enforcement and Animal Care and Control are a complaint-driven agency. So I'm here to complain to you that somebody needs to close out my case with Code Enforcement, please, with the trucks, so that I can move on with my life and sell my property.
Thank you.
Okay?
Kirk? Ooh, Linequist?
Took me a 6th grade to learn how to spell it. Kirk Youngquist, 14538 94th Street. Okay, everybody, I've been out here, well, my grandfather taught at Palm Beach High. Grew up on North Lake. I moved out to North Lake. Okay, I owned 2 houses in Lake Park, prior unincorporated Palm Beach County, so I've had to deal with Palm Beach County for a long time. I moved out to the acreage so I can have my airboats, have my trucks, have my stuff. And besides, when she talks about 12,000 pounds, you can do a half-ton truck and register it at 12,000. That's registered weight that it says it can hold. So if you, technically, if you have a truck, a 1 ton or a half ton, you register if you want to pay the 12,000 or whatever, because when you pull a trailer, they regulate the weight to both of them, the trailer and that what you're towing. So that's how that works. So anything can be GW, however you want to rate your trucks. The rules keep changing. Like I said, I bought my property out there in '89. I got 3 acres, and they just keep changing the rules and just adding stuff. I mean, most of the time, all of us moved out there, the working class people, okay? I don't, now you're all hollering about housing and this and that, but where do you want us to go now? Where do you want to put us in a corner somewhere else? Where do you want us to be? We're an eyesore now on the acreage. So, hey, that land's worth money now. Let's move the working people over somewhere else. I'm just, maybe think about that. Where else did we go? At that time, acreage was cheaper than Jupiter Farms property. And now, you know, now acreage is getting up because they put in all these developments here. And no offense to the county here, our roads, we're trapped like rats. The last time I had to go all the way to Southern, I live right on North Lake, had to go to Southern to go to DeQuesta because the road, somebody got in an accident, closed up. I mean, you keep building 3,500 homes here, here, and here. Where do you want to send us?
Matt Engel, Annette Senatus, R. Dougal, and C. Dougal.
Hello. I just want to say, I've been in the acreage 29 years. I don't have a truck.
Your name, sir?
I'm sorry?
Your name, please?
Matt Engel.
Thank
I'm sorry.
you.
And 29 years, I don't even have a truck, okay? But I support them being allowed to have them. That's why we live there. We own our roads. A lot of this is premised on what Indian Trail sent y'all, from what I understand, and I've read that letter. But we own and pay for our roads. So as far as the damage to the roads, we also pay 2.5 to 5 times any other local district and don't get anywhere near the level of service that they're claiming that this is premised on needing to be done for. They're concerned about preserving the AR zoning, agricultural, rural, but yet they're milling all the roads anyway, and they're doing everything contradictory to what their expenses or their excuses are. As far as the adjoining lands having to see them without great expense, that great expense to shield that is on the truck owner. It is not on Indian Trails. And it's not that great of an expense. But you can have RVs that go to 65-foot length, 13 and a half foot high, 40,000 pounds, and that's fine, but somehow a dump truck is a problem. You can have boats, you can have accessory structures up to 35 feet high, you got trash trucks, you got deliveries. Some places don't like pickups. Some places don't like clotheslines or mailboxes. That's why we don't live in those places. And I mean, I put up with manure odor from a neighbor. I don't have horses either, but that's part of why we live there. And the heavy commercial vehicles are not compatible with the AR zone, which makes no sense. And it's AR for historic reasons, but they have no problem with and they're complaining about under the ULDC, the densities, but they got no problem with Minto or GL. The district roadway is not for repeated heavy loads, but they refuse to restrict construction traffic from GL Homes over to 60th, which is a paved road, as opposed to the milled roads that have already failed. So they're already destroying our roads with that. Their own guidelines, one of the things they complained about was that if you have a truck, you're going to need a bigger culvert, and that's going to be detrimental to the drainage. Their own current guidelines give up to 43% of your frontage, 90 feet of culvert in front of your property. Their current guidelines. And you don't need that much for a pickup.
Miss?
Thank you for having me. My name is Annette Sonatas. I live at 14611 66th Street North, Loxahatchee. My husband and I have a trucking business, semi-tractor trucks. We have owned the authority since 2011. We have been a resident in Loxahatchee since about 2006. My only issue is that when we first moved there, they said we can have 2 semi-tractor trucks along with other box trucks and other items, and now everything has changed. I went out of town, I work out of the state, I come back, I will go back and forth. We had a meeting in 2019 in the Indian Trail office. A lot of people were there. They mentioned then one of the commissioners, I'm not sure it was the mayor or a commissioner or whatever, she said, it's a possibility you can keep 2 trucks there. And now all of a sudden this year, after COVID, they saying that, okay, you maybe can have 1 tractor trailer, but it cannot be over 12,500. A code enforcement went to my house. We have an RV. My RV was 1 foot ahead of my home. It cannot be between my home and the street. And I say it must have been measured. So no matter what, I pushed it back. And now we have the code enforcement going to our home all the time. But I'm here for the trucks, and that's our way of life. That's how we make money. We are a 2-income household. I have my grandkids there. I want them to enjoy Loxahatchee upbringing. One graduated at Seminole Ridge, one go to the Anchorage. So it's a wonderful environment for me and my family. But if we cannot have our business there, we don't have no place to put our trucks. That's it.
Thank you. Miss?
Good afternoon to the respectful chairs. My name's Claire Dougal. I'm from Loxahatchee. Lived there since 2001, and since 1994. My husband and I, we've been in the trucking business. That's the only source of income or living that we have. We're raising family, and we've lived in Loxahatchee for 22 years, and we've never had a problem with the trucking. And we provide in helping to build the school, haulage, and transportation. Even today, with an hurricane zooming, it's the truckers that are going to bring the supplies and reliefs to people. So I'm joining with the community in saying that, and our business, it helped one of my sons in the business. He works there. We're contributing. We're a good law-abiding citizen, and we have the license that we apply and keep up for those times for the trucking business. So we're not huge business. We're just small people trying to make a living. So I'm asking you with your good office today to give us a satisfaction. We would like to keep our truck on our property. We tried the public parking. Equipment got stolen, like a $2,000 computer. And other people, when we called the police, they were there taking statement for other people who've been vandalized. So we're just asking, just to allow us parking and come up with some, resolution. You've seen me here lots of time. We're tired, but we still have to give our voice for all. We haul the sod all the way in Belglade, and it's the hay-har. We're doing together whatever work it is. So we're just asking you to consider the farmers, the truckers, their lives. And as we heard before, father and grandfather going off to work. It is very sad because some of these husband and father, they leave home at 5 in the morning. They don't be back home until a week. Children are there, so thank you. Okay.
Thank you. I actually have what appears to be 4 more speaking cards. Kathy Armstrong. This was submitted on Thursday, but if you're here, I have a card for you. Burgess Hanson. If you're here, I have a card for you. Dove Moore. And Robin Gasso.
Hi, thank you. I grew up in West Palm. I went to school here. I was here before St. Lucis was here. We went to where Victoria Groves is. It used to be called Anthony Groves. We used to pick oranges there. We used to do strawberries. Everything has changed now, and we moved to Loxahatchee so that we can still have that environment that we grew up in. And now there's things that are changing. The rules are changing. These rules weren't there before. These rules weren't here years ago when we were all still here. And now you guys are changing things, and it's not fair to the people that are there already. For example, RVs. My husband's on dialysis. The only way we travel is RV. My sister has an RV, and they stay at our house. We can't go down to one RV. That's not applicable to us. We have neighbors that have semi-trucks. Their property is way nicer kept than people that don't have any kind of vehicles there at all. So I think we're discriminating against livelihoods and how people live, and I don't think that's fair. So I would like you guys to relook at how it was when people moved out there to live the lifestyle that we want. If we wanted a 1/4 acre lot, we'd move to Wellington. We'd go to Arden, we go to Westlake. We don't want that. We don't want someone coming by and saying your grass is too tall because it's bigger than an inch. That's not why people move out there. They move out there for peace, for quiet, for family. So I would like you guys to relook at those rules that you guys implemented after 2019 that were not there previously. Thank you.
That's the end of the speaking cards. I have several cards that do not wish to speak but would like their comments read into the record. Anthony Dugal, we are asking for your vote and consider that we can park commercial vehicles on our property. R. Dugal, same thing. We are asking for consideration for truckers. Willie Harp, I do not think it's fair to limit the amount of trucks, light, medium, or heavy, to business owners and agricultural businesses. Also, there should not have an acre amount for business owners that are in the Loxahatchee or the acreage. Julia Thomas, in support. Juan Trier. We moved here 20 years ago, like many others, to get away from the city life. Please don't bring city life to us. We don't need to make Loxahatchee like California. We all have multiple vehicles here. Elsa Diaz, living in Loxahatchee next to Corbett, heavy land, and living the small farm life on rural lifestyle. We all have recreational vehicles, campers, and 3-ton trucks. If we oppose 5B, we will hurt Loxahatchee residents. Esther Moreno, I support the commercial vehicles in acreage residential zoning, as in the past, people's livelihoods at stake. Juan Abrea, please allow commercial vehicles in the acreage, as in the past, people's livelihoods are on the line. Please allow multiple recreational vehicles, as in the past. This is a unique community with large lots. Edmelis Rodriguez, I am in favor of keeping commercial vehicles on our properties as well as recreational vehicles. Benjamin Ayala, I am in favor of keeping and allowing commercial and recreational vehicles on our property. Sandra and Charles Goodson, we have and run a business that helps keep construction running. We moved here so we can enjoy a carefree life with our children. Kaylee Lang, want to allow commercial and recreational vehicles. Juan Phillips, we would like to keep our rural lifestyle with less restrictions on commercial vehicles and our property. Please consider revision of this matter. Alexandra Phillips, I support revision and consideration to allow the parking of commercial vehicles on our property. We wish to keep the low restriction and rural nature of our AR zone property. Carlos Corona, we have lived this way for 33 years and no one has been bothered until now. Please put the codes back to the way they were in the 90s. Gloria McCain, I apologize, it is in Spanish and I do not understand it. Actually, it says in support. So, Marisol, I do not support code enforcement. I read that one already. Craig Van Easton, our family owns property in Loxahatchee and the acreage. We would like to keep the area as it was purchased with no rules on the type of vehicles or the quantity we keep on our property. Jordan Hurtado, we need your support. Our business is hurting. Sofia Gonzalez, please help us. We need our business to survive. Marley Garcia, I run a small business. My husband and children live and work out here. We would like to keep living and working at our home. These are duplicates. Okay, so they were submitted both days. Irez de la Rosa, please vote in favor of our small business and not hurt we're hurting and really bad. We have nowhere to go. Ainsley Rodriguez, keep Loxahatchee rural. 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 And that is the end of our speaking cards and non-speaking but wanted in the record. And these cards are I'm going to make an assumption, Mayor, I apologize. I believe these cards are in support of having commercial vehicles in the acreage. Doesn't mean they support what, so I'm just going to say I'm support a commercial vehicle in the acreage, so I think that's what they mean. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, and that is the end of our cards. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for everybody being here and sharing your thoughts on this matter with us and the thousands of emails we received. All right, Commissioner, I was going to ask, Ms. Amara, can you put up the slide that lists the number of vehicles registered out there? I think there were 3 zip codes. Yep. Thank you. All right, Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually wanted to start with the basics before we have fun, right? Let's see if we can agree on classifications of commercial vehicles, trying to help with the definitions. You had some slides with a lot of different numerical categories, and trying to keep it simplex. So somebody who isn't familiar with codes, my thought was if we could come up with a light duty, medium duty, heavy duty, and define those by weights, I think we could start from a better foundation of what we're allowing or disallowing. And if anyone has a better idea, I'd love to hear it. I thought lightweight would be under the 16,000 because according to the chart the mayor just had you bring up, it solves most of the problems. The light duty, and then the medium duty would be the 16 to 26, and then heavy duty would be anything over 26,000. Those are just suggestions I thought made the most sense, but would love to hear what everyone else has to say.
That's great, thank you. I had a question because this, I think, had come up earlier, which is on the classifications on how people classify and trying to have consistency with the way Department of Motor Vehicles classifies versus, I think, the federal versus having our own system. And I normally don't go first, but I normally like to, and I agree with what, and I like where you were going. I just think that it would be more difficult for staff to enforce if they don't have really clear, and I mean, the classes come from, I believe, the state. And so that information, I mean, we can just go, for me, it just makes sense to go with the way the state does it, and if you want to combine a couple of them together and talk about class 1 and 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, and 4, I'm good with that too. Sure, please.
So we could, I mean, just call classes if you'd like, the certain number of classes, and I can't really see it from here as well, and our screens are pretty pale. But we could call classes, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't see the weight
Goes up
on
to
5.
16,000.
Right, like light duty, these classes. And then you could say the next
Because up there, they call it medium.
classes could be medium, so on, if you'd like.
Commissioner Woodward, you're recognizing Commissioner Marino.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner Baxter, for starting with the definition, because I think, and this is where we need to start. And thank you, staff, for bringing us all of this information. I know it was a lot to dig through, and you guys have provided us a lot for us to digest as well. I just wanted to point out, you had a slide with commercial vehicles definitions and classifications with ULDC, state, and federal. And honestly, even though I don't always like giving props to Tallahassee, I think Tallahassee, or state level, has the best definition where it's anything over 26,000 is considered, I guess, a commercial vehicle. So the middle definition right there. And then, we show that there's, I guess, 13 classifications. So 1 through 6 is considered light on the federal, and anything a class 7 or above is considered heavy duty. And I mean, so these classifications exist already under other entities, and I agree, we should just kind of piggyback on that. I'm not sure where the 12,500 came from, but that's before. And if we're looking forward, just having a light duty and a heavy duty, and then the classifications exist with the state in agreement that anything over 26,000 would be heavy duty and anything under. And then if we need to break it out a little bit, these classifications do exist, but it seems like the 26,000 is where the federal and the state already agree that that's heavy. So.
Commissioner Marino, you're recognized.
Thank you. One of the reasons we're here today is because we needed clarification. That was what we asked for, was clarification, because it's been referred to differently in different parts of the code. I believe that given the makeup of what is in that community, I would be comfortable with class 1 through class 4 trucks being qualified in that area. It actually increases the weight that we have a current limit on. It increases the weight to 16,000. And Lisa, the reason I said that was because of what you said about the Isuzu truck. Yesterday I was at the 14,000 pound, but I know that truck is what keeps people in business. I don't want to put people out of business. So I would be comfortable in expanding to include, and as we're doing it with the classes, class 1 through 4 would be included. This is actually expanding the weight limitation we have now. I appreciate that there are people in the audience that have vehicles that are more than this, but regardless of the fact that those vehicles are parked in your yards, they are not allowed. Class 1 through 4 is what I am comfortable with, and I would see us saying that that would be the limitation, and it would clarify it. That would be what our light duty would be. And
Excuse
Please, miss.
me. It's
Do not
back to the
interrupt.
board now. We're having our discussion. Thank you.
We're not talking about RVs, we're not talking about recreational vehicles. Right now, today, what we're talking about are commercial vehicles. So then I also would like to ask staff, what are the limitations on the amount of commercial vehicles in a property?
Well, currently it's 1, but, one of the proposals that a lot of the small businesses, they don't have one little Isuzu or little 450, a lot of them have 2. So it seems, staff wouldn't be opposed if it went up to 2 of those, because looking at the amount of small businesses and that registration data from FDOT, there's just a tremendous amount of vehicles, over 300 vehicles in that 10,000 to 16,000 range if you combine those 2 columns. That, there's a lot of folks that if we went up to 1 or 2, up to 16,000, you're going to cover a lot of small business. And then the bigger above, the amount of vehicles above 16,000 pounds gets smaller, and there's different issues with those. But 1 or 2 for, I think, staff purpose, they're.
Okay, thank you. And when I make a decision for the greater good, and I realize that, we're looking at a community. I have districts in my community too that this falls under, so this is not just a one district answer. I have communities in my district that have this that do not have HOAs. They may have voluntary HOAs, but they do not have HOAs that are mandatory. But I think for clarifying, because it was a definition that we needed to clear up, I think if we do class 1 through class 4 trucks being allowed, I'd be comfortable with 2. And these are for vehicles that are overnight on a property, correct? Yes. Okay, that's clarification too. We really, when we're talking about something like this, I need to clarify that this is for vehicles that are parked overnight on a property. So that would be what I'm comfortable with. Class 1, 2, 3, and 4 being allowed, which means we expand the code a little bit and going from 1 to 2 commercial vehicles. Anything more than that, it was not allowed, so I don't believe we should be making this greater than it is. We have 17,000 properties out there. We're trying to accommodate 500. That is a small portion of that. I don't know what the impact is to those 17,000 others. So this is what I'm comfortable with, and thank you.
Excuse me. No, I'm sorry. Can we get somebody? Can I get the deputy, please? Can I? They're going to get him. Thank you.
You don't respect your community. You ask for people, it's not here.
Thank you. All right. Commissioner Woodward, you recognize.
Thank you. I understand with the class 1 through 4. As far as classes 5 and 6, can you pull that slide back up?
Don't worry.
No, this is time for us to have our discussion, is it not? I mean, so I'm asking about these because when, I'm reading through the state guidelines in this, how many trucks that are in those 2 categories are we talking about in this area?
Well, the data is on this slide. So greater than 16,000, it's 38 plus 48 plus 93. I'm not good
No,
with
just,
math.
just
So
the
150?
under 26, the between 16 and 26.
Between 16 and 26, what, around 160? Just in those 3 zip codes? What's
86, right?
38 and 48, oh, yes, I'm sorry. I was adding the 93, I shouldn't have done that. So, yeah, and something else to think about too, what staff had proposed is not all trucks are created equal. So some uses require a different level approval. So, you know, the options for the board today, right now it's 1, 12, 5, and that's it. And going up to 14 or 16 rather, it'll cover a lot of different uses. But we're talking, what's on the table right now is just the by right, everybody gets to have the up to 16. And that's very straightforward and consistent. But, you know, other options that could be considered is for larger vehicles, a different approval process. You know, it was just very difficult to put in the same category these kind of commercial heavy vehicles with the less than 16. I mean, there's a lot less of them, and, you know, they're definitely a different category.
So my question for Commissioner Marino with this is, you know, if we do the up to the class 4 by right, we put the number on there, do you see a path forward for owner operators with larger vehicles to get an approval to park these trucks on their property?
Mayor?
Yes, please, sorry.
The larger the vehicle, the more commercial it becomes. And if you say,
I just wanted to give this to you guys, I'm sorry, with all disrespect. I just don't want us to go from 12.5, which was a number that came out of nowhere, to 16. Just 2 licenses, a regular and a commercial.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to please take your seat, thank you.
I understand. I'd like this to leave this here for you guys to look at. If we're gonna go for definitions, we should go.
please sit down. I guess the better question is, other counties around our state set an example as to what they allow. This started as an equestrian community, not as a commercial community. It was small business equestrian. People wanted to go out there and have their horses. Because it has grown, and not just the acreage too, I have this in Jupiter Farms. It's not allowed. If we expand the definition and allow larger trucks, we're going to see, you can't just say yes because there's only 67 of them, or 86 of them in that category. It means that in the future, there will be more of those in the category coming, because now they say, oh, we can do that. Legally, we can do that. So I look at the neighbors, and a lot of the neighbors that were against this did not show up, but called me and sent me emails. They said, we're not coming because, excuse me.
Okay, excuse me. Okay, here's the way this is gonna continue. We are not going to be having conversations. If you would like to continue to stay here and watch the proceedings, you're more than welcome, and we are happy to have you. But if you're not, then I might need to ask you to please, you can go outside. There's chairs set up out there, and then you can have conversations. You want to yell at the TV, fine. But we're trying to have a discussion here on this matter. And so I'm asking for your cooperation. If you interrupt and you make me do this again, I am going to ask, and it's unfortunate that I need to ask our deputies to get involved in this, because I know that's nobody wants that to happen. So I'm asking for your cooperation. Thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I have had people call my office and speak with me personally that did not come today because they felt they've been bullied. They did not want to come. And they didn't want to be bullied by people that were in favor of larger vehicles and heavier vehicles. So the voices that you hear today are strictly the ones that are in support of us changing our code. a code that has already existed. Now, my question to staff is this. Can you please tell me, around the state, what other counties are doing in reference to what class of vehicles they are allowing in their counties, in this district, in these districts, in the rural districts?
What we mostly saw is up to 15,000 pounds. People could have one or two vehicles, and almost across the board, which we allow as well, if you have agriculture on site, you can have a larger vehicle. So, and that's something that we need, when we do revise the code, is to be very clear. If you have an agricultural classification and you have a horse 450 or whatever you need to trail it, those are going to, universally those are covered. And we would apply the same philosophy for the commercial ag on site. They can have the larger vehicles. But typically we saw a 15,000 pound was very popular. Also 10,000 pounds was really popular. Some allowed larger vehicles on 5 acres and up, like we allow the contractor storage on 5 acres and up allows a semi. But, there was a variety of different places. Some allow them in the rear. The larger vehicles, they have to be in the rear screened. But as you heard today, some people can't keep a vehicle or even a boat in the rear, so that's something we want to look at, allowing like a waiver if it's not in the rear screened or such, to accommodate septic tanks and drain fields and things. But
So by going to 16,000 pounds, we are actually above what is considered normal throughout the rest of the state.
for the most part at the jurisdictions we looked at, with the exception of, for example, the Everglades agricultural area, those major massive properties of ag might have different rules, but
But those are also larger parcels of
larger
property.
parcels. When we're looking at the acre and a quarter to 5 acre range, definitely we're a change to 16 would be above the average that we found.
So I'm going to stick with my staying at the maximum of 16 for these communities.
Thank you. Commissioner Bernard, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my comment is to staff. If we decided to do on the class 1 through 4, that would be basically kind of like in the AR districts, am I correct?
Yes, that would be ARRSA, which is rural residential areas, Heritage Farms, Acreage, Jupiter Farms.
And can we do something different for just the acreage area in regards to other things that the district commissioner would like to entertain?
We talked about internally coming up with a new geography. That could theoretically be done if the board wanted to do something different. We could do up to 16 across the board, make that simple, but between 16 and another number, the board could establish a different geography with a different set of application process and approval process. Something that we talked internally, because we didn't have a geography to go with. It could be the rural and exurban tiers north of, well, it would be south of the B line or something like that. A geography would have to be written that doesn't exist, because right now the way the tiers work, there's tiers in multiple areas. It's not, but it's theoretically possible if the board directed to look at a specific area. And, something that was floated before and discussed, is an overlay. But again, just like this morning, it's going to be a challenge for a specific geography to get consensus out there, but it's definitely something that could be drafted.
Yeah, having had the discussion regarding an overlay, I don't think I want to go there. But what I'd love to be able to do is working with the district commissioner and see what can we do, something that is specific to the boundary that the district commissioner would want, so it doesn't impact maybe other districts, and where it could be a pilot. So that's what I'd love to see, if it's something that the district commissioner would like to entertain.
So I'm gonna go ahead and weigh in. I'm okay with expanding this out to 1 to 4. That makes sense. My question on the 2 trucks. So what if somebody has 2 pickup trucks, just regular pickup trucks? They're considered class 1, aren't they?
That is something that I found a little bit difficult with reading everyone's codes, because your regular just personal vehicle could be anything on this slide. And, we were trying to think about families, and you might have 2 Class 1s and you might have 2 for your commercial operation. So that's something that we would have to look at, because you should, I think I own 5 cars. I think I do. I might own 4. I'm not 100% sure, because we just bought and sold a car, and personal vehicles, and that's something where the code should clarify. If it's your personal, vehicle, less than 10,000, it shouldn't be capped. Like, just because you have 2 6,000 vehicles doesn't mean you can have any little Isuzu pickup truck. So that's something that we would have to work on.
Yeah,
Does
because
that make any sense?
I don't want people swept up in that, because I know a lot of people drive pickup trucks as their regular vehicle, and yet also understand that there are small businesses operating out there that need access to a different type of vehicle, and so I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with the semi trucks. And that would be anything above this, or actually, I'm not okay above 16,000. Any of the vehicles over 16,000 pounds. I think those need to be dealt with separately. I am supportive of trying to find a place to create storage for vehicles. I think that, in fact, we just had a discussion last week about some property over that Solid Waste Authority has that is going to become available shortly. I think as of today or tomorrow, that lease will now terminate, so maybe that property could be looked at. It's in a great location. So I am supportive of us trying to find an accommodation, but with 16,000 properties being out there and everybody being allowed to have semi-trucks, I can only envision what's going to happen. I'm aware of a situation where somebody inherited property out there, and they now rent it out to 4 semi-trucks for storage. And I was also made aware of somebody else who lives in the eastern part of the county, bought property out there specifically to store semi-trucks on. So I don't want to see that area be turned into a storage area for large vehicles. I don't think that's fair to the rest of the residents. I also, while I appreciate, I think we can accommodate commercial vehicles in a way that allows our small businesses to operate without impinging, though. And then, because once you start getting into the large vehicles, then you've got the 24-hour running of refrigerators potentially, and how you're going to monitor that. And I think it's opening up a can of worms. And again, we have to look at the totality of everybody out there and all the properties. And in a change like this, that would mean potentially up to 32,000 commercial vehicles, even just going between 1 and 4 at 2 vehicles per property. That's 32,000 additional vehicles could be brought out there. So Commissioner Woodward, you recognize.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I know when this first came up several months ago, one of my initial questions was finding a way for owner-operators to have their vehicles, which means some sort of a registration where they prove residency, that they do live at this place, and that is their truck. And, even if it's not necessarily their truck, if it's their employer's truck, but their job is to drive that truck, proving that, it is theirs. Finding a path for these people, not in a way that encourages everyone with the truck from everywhere in this country to relocate to Loxahatchee, but finding a way for people who are there right now to be in compliance with what they thought, and whether it was because they were given bad information from a real estate agent or however this came to be. But we have a number, not a large number, of people right now who are living there. And is there a way for us to find a path for the people there operating their business at this point to register that they live there, this is their truck? Is that not even an option that this board can entertain? Is that something that can be done that doesn't open up the entire, all of western Palm Beach County to become a parking lot for semis.
Commissioner Baxter, then Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Mayor. So I was hoping we would just solidify these definitions before we moved on to allowable versus not allowables. I definitely like the by right up to 16,000 for the 2 vehicles, and classifying the classes 1 through 4 can be light duty. I do think class 5 and 6 would be more of a medium duty, the 16 to 26 range. And then the 26 plus obviously being heavy duty. I think that, was that class 7 and 8, and I think that just, it makes a lot of sense. And I do appreciate the expansion. I guess, so many things to wrap in this. I do agree. I do not want it to be a commercial parking lot. I don't want outside a bunch of people suddenly deciding, we're going to put 5 to 10 semi-trucks on a property. Absolutely not. I don't think anyone wants that.
It's not legal.
But also recognizing, and we may disagree on what was allowed and what wasn't, I'm also concerned amongst putting small businesses out of business, truck drivers having nowhere to go. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Of reasons we should find a pathway forward for them. It's endless. You've heard them, not worth repeating. I do think, though, we need to find a path forward, and we had started setting some parameters that I think would answer most, if not all of even the mayor's concerns, being a simple permit fee over, for the heavy-duty classification of up to 2. We don't want, and then making sure with that, in that simple permit process, just making sure that vehicle is registered to the owner, making sure that if it's not to the owner, it is to the business they work for, makes a lot of sense. As far as overnight, nobody wants to live next to something that has refrigeration running overnight. And I know they're very passionate today because this is their livelihood, literally how they feed their families. So I can't really hold it against anybody getting upset that we wouldn't find a pathway forward for them, but also within that, we don't want to stop people from sleeping. So we had said, we have noise ordinances, and you can't leave, even if you're allowed there, your truck with refrigeration running all night. That doesn't make sense for anyone. I think that simple permit process would also allow us to keep track of how many trucks are coming, so that if it is a problem in the future, we now have a way of tracking it and saying, okay, let's look at this. I do not want us also to be opened up to a lawsuit. I mean, I know several people in here, and the common theme was, we've been out here 20 plus years, and they never had a problem. It's because we're mixing lifestyles. We're allowing developments to come in. Not everyone has to understand our lifestyle, but maybe understand that this isn't a one-size-fits-all. There are plenty of places in Palm Beach County that you can live that don't allow this. I personally live next to 200 chickens. I think 50 of them are roosters. And I would still rather live there than in an HOA neighborhood. I mean, there's going to be slight inconveniences with freedoms. I don't ever dispute that, but that's why people moved out there, for the freedom to use their private property the way they feel, and they have for decades. So I am not in favor of taking that away from them. I am not in favor. I mean, we can argue all day long whether they were allowed or not. I've read code that I think I would have interpreted as being allowed. So we are here where we are, and so I do agree with up to 2. I would like to see 2, if you do not have, I would like to see up to 2 semi-trucks, but it has to be linked to ownership or they work for the company that owns the vehicles, because I don't want it to be a free-for-all of parking. Absolutely not. And I do think there's a path forward. As far as medium duty goes, we haven't even touched on that, but keeping things simple, I think if we allowed 2 of each class, but with the caveat, if you have 2 heavy duty via permit fee, then you can't have 2 medium. You know, like, I guess it would be a total of 2, combining those classes of medium and heavy, which would, I think, solve most, if not all, of these concerns. And then there was something about outside storage because of the small businesses out there that we had discussed or addressed. And within the code, I don't remember which slide you had up there, there was a space that says, for the rural and exurban tiers, you could consider these changes for the home occupation contractor storage. I mean, if we updated that, you know, even just instead of 5 acres, the 1 1/4, it's a process too. They would have to go through and get approved and so on. And that is kind of what I wanted to really, I guess, get into and just create a pathway forward, because that is medium duty and heavy duty storage. And that's where I think it would solve a lot of problems and address a lot of concerns.
Commissioner Bernard, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff, is it possible to limit this to an area? And if another area in the future wants to do something different, they can, or we can vote on it in the future?
Well, there's the up to 16. What we would recommend is on those ones, this slide shows the different kind of home occupations currently allowed. So the simplest thing on the up to 16 is just the general property or home occupation, just changing that one right now where it's 12.1, 12.5, to change that one to 116, and then we could set that aside. And then the over 16, you know, if we were to do 2 medium or 2 heavy and that had an approval process, we recommend looking at the home contractor storage yard. Right now there's the provision for 5 acres and up. That's only ARRSA. It does have to be on a collector arterial roadway, and there's the rules there for that one. And we saw the closest fit to have a home semi-truck would be to use the language under the contractor storage yard and to leave 5 acres and up alone, because that's already set, and then establish a 1 acre to 4.9 acres. And then that could be tailored to a specific geography if that was the board direction, to only places in a certain geography qualify for that. But that home contractor storage is a DRO approval right now. So we don't have a special permit process in place. We would have to invent that, and a special permit would be staff-only approval, and we don't have that established, but we do have the collector arterial requirements for most commercial uses, so staff would recommend that they met that commercial or collector arterial requirement because of the roadway, and then allow a waiver or a subdivision variance if they don't meet that. But it would be definitely a different complexity, because it's different, you know. But the general ones could be set aside, you know, okay, fine, that applies to everyone, the up to 16, you know, and then address the 16 and above by some geography that's to be determined by the board, if that's the pleasure of the board.
So I just respectfully, Commissioner Baxter, I can't support the semis. It's not somewhere I think we should be doing. I think in listening to Indian Trails Improvement District and their concerns about the roadways, we're not responsible for maintaining those roads. They are, and they are, although not a municipality, they are a special district, and support them in their autonomy as well. They're responsible to their taxpayers for collecting those funds, and knowing that they've come in front of us and told us that this potentially would, in fact, increase everybody's taxes out there, it's not something I can support. Okay, Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. We also heard them say they would like to find a path forward that doesn't cause the huge burdens. I mean, that's what the supervisor said when she was here. So I think everyone understands a pathway forward for livelihood of these truck drivers is important. We can't just say, you know, not in my backyard every time we turn around and push people out. We've made, you know, we've had them there for decades again, which sets a certain precedent of being there. So I do feel concerned, but to Lisa's point, I do like the carving out the 1 to 4.9 acres and having a simple permit fee. And to Commissioner Bernard's point, if we wanted to make that south of Beeline and north of Southern between the extension and the Glades region, I guess the M8 canal might be, the LA, you know, might be a good cutoff, but you get the general gist of the dimensions of the area that I'm talking about, if that is the direction we would be heading, because I just can't see a path, no path forward for the, you know, to allow semi-trucks for hardworking small business owners, and we can't keep telling them, you're not allowed here.
Commissioner Marino, you're recognized.
Being a small business owner for my entire adult life, and if I didn't work, I didn't get paid, I understand what it means to have a small business. But I also understand that this is a community of 16,000 or 17,000 properties. I'm not sure which one it is, in the range of those two. And we're trying to accommodate a very, very small group of these people. And my decisions are always made for the greater good, not the smaller good. And I think you all have heard me say that before. I, again, am comfortable with the 1 to 4 in the commercial. And that doesn't mean your personal vehicle. And staff, you and I had a discussion about, I mean, I grew up in Connecticut, and if it was a commercial vehicle, you actually had a license plate that said commercial vehicle on it. And you were banned from traveling on the Merritt Parkway because it said no commercial vehicles allowed. And if it was a combination of a commercial and a residential, it said combo. So you could actually still travel on the turnpike because it was your personal vehicle. But we don't have that luxury here where a vehicle, even if it's not a personal use vehicle and it weighs 16,000 pounds and it is commercial, it doesn't say commercial on it unless maybe it has somebody's name on the side of it. Again, I have always ruled my thoughts by what is the greater good. I believe there should be a path for these folks, but whether it's a vehicle storage area that's on a main arterial road, something of that nature, I could see something of that nature. But again, I am pretty firm in how I feel about this. We've expanded already to the 16,000 pounds. Once you say, yes, this is now approved, which is something that never was approved before, you will have an influx, so that number will change. It won't just be the 86 that you have on the board there. And I don't know what other county in the state allows semi-tractors on property less than 5 acres. I'm not sure if that even takes place anywhere else in the state that does that.
It was difficult to identify because the other jurisdictions' codes are like ours, where they have multiple parts of their codes referencing the vehicles, so it was really difficult to identify. We did see for sure on 5 acres and up, but.
Okay. So again, anything on those smaller lots, to me, I'm not comfortable with. I'm not comfortable with that for their neighbors, and I'm not comfortable with that for the 16,000 other residents that live in that community, or I can't tell you how many lots there are in Jupiter Farms that are like this, or in Palm Beach Country Estates that are like this. And those are the folks that I've heard from that said, we do not want this. We do not want this change. So from my perspective up here, for the greater good, I see us going to 16,000, 2 commercial vehicles at most, and that's what my vote would be for. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Barnett and then Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. At this point, I find myself siding with the mayor and Commissioner Marino with regards to the expansion up to 16,000. Semi-trucks is a different story. With regards to whatever decision this board makes, can direction be given to staff to look into properties where these semi-trucks can be parked without creating any kind of burden on the properties of these residences in the subjected areas.
Do this legally.
I know there was discussion about a couple of properties, and one in particular that might be made available. The Solid Waste Authority property that we were discussing last week. I would like to see that if possible, if there's no objection by the board. But the larger vehicles, I know there was also discussion about potential litigation. Sarah, Commissioner Baxter raised that point. But from another perspective, with regards to litigation, if we were to allow these semi-trucks, the big rigs, to be parked on properties adjacent to properties where they may end up suffering a loss of value to their property. That hasn't been discussed really, that I could tell. And this question, I guess, is for council. Would the county be liable for reduction in property values if someone were to complain and maybe bring a lawsuit, maybe under the Burt-Harris Act, with regards to a taking?
The Burt-Harris Act provides that a cause of action for damages where government regulation inordinately burdens someone's property, their own property. As far as a neighboring property having claims, there certainly are a number of other potential causes of action. And
against the county.
Right, and I don't want to speculate about what they could be. There's a universe of, potential arguments, nuisances and whatnot.
But it's not far-fetched. It is a possibility.
I think anytime you adopt a regulation that somebody's not happy about, that's always a possibility.
I've heard from the residents in my district, District 3, they are concerned about what's happening in District 6 and in District 5, District 1, excuse me. Afraid that this might happen here. They might find semi-trucks parked on properties adjacent to their own lots in District 3. They don't want this. And I'm reluctantly supporting the expansion of up to 16,000 pound vehicles. But semi-trucks is something absolutely I cannot support.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just to add on to that,
Yeah.
to go a little further, whenever you're adopting ULDC amendments, unless you're infringing on a constitutional right of somebody, like an equal protection violation or something of the sort, this is legislative action, and there's a lot of deference to your decisions as long as they're supported. They're in support of your police powers, which are for the protection of health, safety, and welfare, and they're not arbitrary or capricious. There's a logical connection between what you're doing and your police power.
All right, that's what I was looking for. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner, you're done. Okay, Commissioner Woodward and then Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you. I just would also like to address the audience. I don't know how many of you are aware we have sunshine laws, which means we cannot discuss this with each other until we're here. So I thank you for your patience in allowing us to have this type of a discussion. As far as for my fellow commissioners, I have mentioned, I'm from a small town in South Carolina. I actually grew up in a neighborhood, but my next door neighbor had a tractor trailer truck. So I'm trying not to be overly biased in my own childhood upbringing, where that truck was just a part of my everyday life. That was his business. He parked it on the far side of his property. We saw it backing in, and we never saw it again because he had a hedgerow in front of it. So I know living in a neighborhood, it can be done, and it was just accepted. And neighbors, we were neighborly. And I feel like a lot of today, honestly, has just been, it's neighborhoods kind of tearing each other apart, which just breaks my heart, because I love this community, and I want people to get along. And I know I can't force that, and we certainly can't legislate that, but to find a path to make the most people happy. And, I'm looking at this chart that you have up here right now, where we've got on the far right side what's allowed, and, it's fully by wall fence, a hedgerow. I mean, there's ways to make some of this happen, and that's part of what we can put in here, where it's parked, which I know some of this with septic and sewer and wells or whatever, we have to address for that. But, I truly believe most of the people who've come here who want to be able to park their commercial vehicles on their property also want to be good neighbors and not damage the roads and not, be obnoxious to their neighbors. And I think that that's what we're trying to find. And that's what I'm asking for with the path forward, because, again, it's not my district. I would like to defer to the two districts who are involved in this. You're not in agreement, and that's why I like the idea of putting a zone on it, like Commissioner Bernard has brought up, putting an area where more people have come out speaking for this. Jupiter Farms is not speaking for this, so we could exclude them and how we move this forward. But even with the semi-trucks, I just still think that we should be able to find a way forward. My concern with us wanting to provide parking is what would our liability be on security for these areas? Because you put multiple trucks together, it does make somewhat of an easier target for theft of different pieces that are on this. Would be, if we allowed Solid Waste Authority property to be used in this way, are we responsible for security?
No. No, you would put it out as an RFP, and whoever deemed who wanted to operate it would assume the liability. There is, right over by where that property is, there is truck parking already. There's commercial truck parking, a number of sites, properties over there where they allow commercial truck parking. It's an industrial area.
So my one concern with that is truckers who do this for a living. I mean, at this point, they're going to have someone take them to the parking where their truck is and be picked up again, or I guess Uber, if that's an option, and not have their truck with them. And that's what some of these people are asking for. And whether it's a DRO or some sort of a permitting process, I know you said that we can't do some of this, but I mean, I have a sticker from the city of Boca that proves I'm a resident and I can go to the beach park. I have to pay for it. But I mean, there's ways of doing this where you prove your residency. So if people really want to park their truck on their property, I'm having trouble telling them that we will not allow this. That's where my beef is with this, so.
Okay, thank you. I've asked this, I've told you once before, we now have the deputies in the chamber. Okay, thank you. All right, we have Commissioner Baxter, then Commissioner Bernard.
I'll defer to Commissioner Bernard, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to, there are 88 businesses that are impacted by our decision, is that correct? On, like, I guess on the medium and then the other, whatever, is it 35?
Well, that data is just generic data on registrations by zip codes, whether or not it's in unincorporated or not.
Okay.
And there might be a lot more that people are parking out in their yards that we don't know of, and that figure might be a lot less. We do know that there are specific folks that have code violations that are here, and they've talked today that don't have a path forward. So, and I don't know what that number is, but there was 77 in 2022, and I don't know the status of those cases. But they're, proportionately, our data indicates that the amount of commercial vehicles, those semi-trucks and very large trucks, are very small compared to the quantity of lots out there. But there are folks that right now have no path forward.
I guess my question would be, is there a way to just grandfather those who currently have the vehicles on there right now and then don't do anything in regards to changing the rules that would apply countywide?
Let me try and help you with that one. With regard to grandfathering, is it something we could explore? Yes. It's extremely difficult to prove and validate something, and then for how long. But if that's a direction, it's something we could look into on the methods for how you might set it forward. You will remember with landscape services, we did accept that as well and dealt with it. I would argue that was on a different scale and there weren't anywhere near as many, but if that's a direction, we will look at it and see what's that viable way to address that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Does any of this affect District 3?
Well, the proposal that we put on the table is for AR RSA, because that's the lots that were affected in 2019, and there's none in District 3 unless the board wanted to expand to any AR, because there is quite a bit of AR in District 3.
But not, that would fall under either this or by limiting it to from southern north and the previously mentioned boundaries?
Correct.
I guess the thing left is we seem to keep forgetting that, you know, putting yourself into somebody else's position. I can't imagine living in a home for 20 years, thinking I'm good, and then suddenly, you know, here's a code enforcement violation. Here's another code enforcement violation. Oh, and by the way, you have to sell your house and move if you want to. And as much as we want to talk about storage and theft and everything else, the reality is right now, that storage doesn't exist. Then what do they do in the meantime? I think there's a balanced way to not affect neighbors or have a negative impact on them. And in the acreage, anyone who lives in the activated Indian Trails Improvement District, we do pay extra dollars, a lot of extra dollars, and they just voted to raise those dollars in order to live there, in order to have those freedoms. And so the impacts to the roads and the impacts to whatever other concerns, they're making people pay for it. And it's not even, I would say, the semi-truck drivers. I mean, it's just the increase in people. We got Amazon trucks driving up and down, and garbage trucks, and you name it. It is consistent. U-Haul trucks and dump trucks, and it is our way of life out there, and we do move there for the freedoms and have lived there for a very long time. So I would just implore this board to take that into consideration. When you're a small business owner, it's a little different when you rely on what you're allowed to do at your own home and that survival. It's just so important. I mean, I have the most diverse group of people I've ever seen. I mean, you name it. They are from all walks of life, all areas of life, and they all decided they wanted to live in Loxahatchee for those freedoms. And so I would just, you know, implore this board to consider that it could be you. It could have been you, should you have decided to take a different path.
Thank you. So I think we, at this point, we are split. All I can say is I'm more than willing, and I think I heard Commissioner Barnett and Commissioner Marino all state they're willing to work to try and find accommodation in terms of places to go. I could offer up, you know, a time period in which we allow people to make arrangements to relocate those vehicles without penalty to them, whether that's 4 or 6 months, if that's what it takes. But I'm looking at the slide up there again. You have less than 200 vehicles that are over 16,000 pounds. And to impose something on 16,000 property owners for 200 people doesn't seem right, as Commissioner Marino said, in the greater good. And I appreciate the advocacy that everybody has had, but I see we're split on that, so I think what we can move forward with, at least today, is we can move forward with the 1 to 4 being allowed and coming back, bringing language back on that. And I think we're just going to be split on the rest. Commissioner Bernard, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my question is there a way to allow those 200 people to be grandfathered in? You know, I'm not saying that it needs to apply throughout the whole AR, but if it's possible, let's see if there's a way to grandfather those folks, so in that way, it's not going to impact other commissioners' districts, and it will not expand even in the intrail improvement district.
Looking to Indian Trails.
Mayor, I'll just respond to the commissioner. Again, if that's the board direction, let us look at paths that might be done. This would be a little bit more unique than landscape services. We could come back and tell you what it might include. It would require information and verification and validation from a property owner. And you would need to have, and I think we'd want to have time limits on it as well. But I wouldn't want to tell you we've got a process in place right now without having some time to think about it. But if that's a direction, we can look at those opportunities.
Well, I'd love to hear from the other commissioners if we can take a look at that, not to expand it, but just to limit it to just the residents who are currently there.
To those,
Yes, only,
to those, the people that are on that list there.
yes, only those people who are on that list.
Okay, all right. Commissioner, let's see if I get this right. I don't know who went on first. I wasn't paying attention. Commissioner Woodward or Commissioner Baxter? It's Woodward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioner Bernard, for that. I feel more comfortable looking for a way to grandfather these people in. I understand when you say it's a small minority of people, but part of the foundation of this country means that minorities get represented. Just because you're not in the majority doesn't mean that you don't have a voice, doesn't mean that you don't get a say. So I do have a problem with saying it's such a small group of people that we can't accommodate them because more people don't want it. I feel we have to find a way for the smaller group that exists here to have a path forward. And if grandfathering them in is the way to do it, I don't know if we have these numbers identified, so I don't want to say it's got to exactly be that number because I think that was kind of a loose reference, but I understand the overall meaning of it, just that people who are existing and that we can identify currently.
That's current registration from the state of Florida.
But for just those 3 zip codes, right? Is that what,
But yeah, but
I
they,
mean?
so that includes extra area, not just the AR.
And that was not meant to be part of it. It was just the AR RSA that was supposed to be, right?
Right.
So I mean, I don't know if we know those numbers are exactly in the geographic zone we're identifying.
It's got to be something less than that.
Right, but that's about the right area. So yes, I would appreciate if the board would at least give staff direction on what that would look like.
What if they have 4 trucks? Could they get grandfathered in?
I still would go back to the initial conversation with the 2 that Commissioner Baxter stated, but that's a discussion that we can have at that time. But I don't think we want to go and expand the trucks and say it's 4 trucks on one lot. But we just want to figure out if we can grandfather some of the residents, but still limiting to the 2 that we're having discussion regarding.
I just want to clarify what you're saying then. So you're saying to be able to figure out a way to grandfather those people 16,000 and up that are currently registered.
Still with them.
But not to exceed a maximum of 2 per property. So even if they're
if it's more than that 2, then we still wouldn't.
They would not qualify. They would
qualify.
only qualify to grandfather 2 in. That's what
Yes.
you're saying. Okay. All right. That's clear. That's very clear. All right. Let's see. Commissioner Baxter, sorry.
Thank you for that, and I do agree. I'd like to see, I don't know what that number is, and I'm sure Lisa will bring it back to us, so the correct, I guess, numbers are to be grandfathered potentially.
Well, the challenge with this information is we had to request it from the Florida Highway folks, and they would only give it to us aggregated in a lump sum. But we do have all the code violation cases with the folks, some of who are here to start and talk with and narrow that down a little bit more. But I think the first step would be investigating how that would work, how the grandfathering would work, and then the implementation phase. Because as you know, when we had the roundtable with the folks at the Vista Center, there were some people that didn't want to say where they lived. So there's some people out there that we don't know where they are, but but if we came back with a grandfathering option, we can try to find the folks that don't have code violations, but some folks might not want to come forward. So we'll just have to work on that and come back with something.
So I'd like,
Some of us do know the executive director of that department, so I think we can reach out to them.
so just being
I'd like
clear.
I'd like to ask, since we have folks from here, from Indian Trails, your thoughts on what's being discussed? And obviously, there's going to be further discussion. And if you're not prepared to speak on behalf of the board, then
So, yes, I really cannot speak on behalf of the
Okay.
board. However, there was talks with Commissioner Baxter to find a path forward for the current residents that do have trucks with limitations, with screening and permitting and driveway improvements.
okay, very good.
Thank you.
So then, would you have any objection to having staff also follow up with Indian Trails as to what their thoughts on this was?
No, I actually love the idea of grandfathering, the people we can identify that live in the area, up to 2 trucks, absolutely, and then come back with a potential way forward and see what we can agree on, and maybe even have a tiebreaker here in person, which would be great.
So I think, are you guys, do you have
Well,
enough direction to move?
If I could repeat the direction just for the clerk, so we don't have to talk about this later, the clerk and I, because sometimes we have to do that. So what we'll look at is preparing ULDC revisions to change the 12.5 from one business-related 12.5, which is written in multiple different places, to consolidate that to class 1 through 4, which is up to 16,000 pounds, and I think I heard 2 vehicles, and those would be just regular. We'll clearly provide a distinction between the business-related vehicles versus the personal vehicles. You shouldn't get, because personal is different. So there's that. And that will also, staff will work with the county administrator and ITID and probably look at the code cases to identify a path forward, potentially for grandfathering in for the folks that are there today. And come back with that as well. So for the actual code changes, we could work on the less than 16, we can get started on that, and the other one, we won't have exact code changes, we have to come back with a path. So if
Okay.
does that confirm? I'm sorry,
Okay.
and this is for ARRSA, which is AR in the rural and exurban and the rural area of the Glades tier. That was the geography for the 16 and less. But for the grandfathering in, it would be again ARRSA, but we're not clear on where those boundaries may end up at this time. We have to do a little research.
Yeah, and because I know you picked up in there 33411, which comes way into, actually comes into West Palm Beach. I mean, literally all the way down, I think comes maybe as far east as Haverhill or Military.
Yeah, Vista Center is in 33411.
Well, so is, and I know so is Century Village. So,
Yeah, we wouldn't look at a grandfathering and everything in those zip codes. They would still have to have the agricultural, residential, rural service area zoning.
all right, very good. Okay, anything else on this item?
Mayor, if I could, and just to set the expectations on timeframes for this as well. We know we're going to be changing the code, the pieces that we need to come back to you and seek direction on. So I think we understand what code words we're changing, and I'm looking at Lisa and Wendy on reasonable time to come back to clarify on a grandfathering path, whether you would or wouldn't want to include that in those potential code changes as well. So we'd be at least a couple months.
Okay, I'm not sure I understood anything you just
You've
said.
got clear direction on numbers and weights. We do not have direction, and we haven't clarified the path on grandfathering. Hear the words, absolutely, we need to do some more research. But we don't have words that we can go write in the code for that.
Correct.
Taking this as direction to work on that, return to you to discuss. We have 1 or 2 ways to address the grandfathering issue.
Correct.
Okay. I'm
Okay, I
trying to
think
set
that-
expectations on this because a couple different things going on.
Commissioner Baxter, you recognized.
Well, Pat, I thought I was clear. So we're working on grandfathering them currently?
direction we have is we're going to be researching those, find the exact addresses, try and geolocate them, to assign them to, as the board has spoken about, a geographical location. We understand it will tighten that piece up. We would talk to you as a path towards grandfathering. It could be as simple as accepting those addresses and saying they're grandfathered. It could be accepting those addresses and asking someone, this is the way grandfathering has been done in the past, or asking someone to actually make application and submit and confirm that they wanted to do that. Probably a couple different ways to do it, and there might be some other pieces out there that we're not thinking of on the fly, but there's a little more research that needs to be done on the grandfathering piece.
Follow-up, Mayor?
Sure, please.
So then, unless anybody objects, I would like to, because we've been working on this most of this year. Can we stop any new, until we get this figured out, code enforcement, any new ones or fines that are accruing, pause them until we figure it out on this issue, on parking and anything over 16,000 pounds?
I would think without knowing exactly which ones, you might have some that have been cited that would not potentially be on a list and on a grandfathering path. Would think, and we could work with county attorney's office once we've got that part delineated and have that discussion. But we don't know which ones may or may not be eligible.
Is there any harm in just pausing them all for now on this issue, over 16,000 in the acre, until they get it figured out, again, because now we're changing things up?
But what if somebody brings in a truck
You mean while we're
doing this?
we're working on worst case scenarios here.
It's not a worst case, it's just somebody brings in a truck. Here's maybe, let me see if I might be able to make a suggestion on how to move this forward. Leave everything as it is now. Once they come back in and we go to move forward, and if we can find a path forward to grandfather them in, we can eliminate any violations that they have been cited for in trucks and any fines. Correct? Am I correct on that? I'm looking at our attorney. We have the ability to do that?
I believe so. Let's.
We also have, we have 17.
We have another attorney.
Yeah, we have
coming.
Shannon Fox. She's the
Shannon
code enforcement attorney.
How many
I'm the humble
attorneys does it
planning guy.
take to answer a question?
Yeah, so sure, we could pause bringing new cases for the.
Answer my question,
the-
Shannon.
Excuse me?
That was my question. My question was, after we figure out if we have a path forward to grandfather people in, and we decide that as a board, we decide that's the way we want to move forward, can we eliminate any previously accrued fines?
Yes, there's a path forward for all of that. There are some cases that would be running fines that have not gone to lien yet, and some that have gone to lien, but ultimately, all of those liens run in favor of the Board of County Commissioners, and if you decide that you want to release those, then you always will have the power to do that.
So we have a pathway to be able to do that.
Yes,
And my concern would be that other trucks potentially come in, there's a code then cites them, or at this point, we're saying they won't get cited, now they think they're allowed there.
Point taken, so I do agree when it comes back, right? Path forward for pausing, or not pausing, but path forward for grandfathering and I guess working with ITID to see if there's a more permanent path forward. We'll see how that, I guess, shakes out and those conversations go.
Yes, and if I may, can we just call it today, August 30th, 2023? So this would be the baseline for the grandfathering day, because we wouldn't want, like you just brought up, tomorrow there'd be tons of pre-grandfathered vehicles. So today's would be benchmark. Okay.
Yep, perfect. Agreed. What's that? Excuse me, Mr. Torrance.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to add, currently there's 65 active cases out there involving trucks, 17 of which are in daily fine. But I just want to add that if people are hanging their hat on a possible grandfathering in, most of those 65 contain other code violations that aren't going to be addressed if you give them a grandfather. So in other words, if they have structures without permits or junk and trash, those fines aren't going to be reduced based on them getting a grandfathering in for a truck. I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. That's important. That's good to know. Thank you. Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you for that, because it actually reminded me of another issue. Because we have so many small businesses outside of parking, we do need to address the outdoor storage. I guess people, even a gentleman earlier spoke about installing fences, so on and so forth. But right now, are they allowed via code?
Only the 5 acres and up are allowed contractor storage in your yards, and that is one area that, you know, there are small vehicle folks in that under 16,000 range, the fence installer, the electrician, or the paver person that do have some outdoor storage related to their business. And as we look at the grandfathering in, we could look at those folks and see if there's any, you know, and when we come back with the grandfathering in, we could ask the board if they want to allow some home yard storage for some equipment related to their business, but we could bring that up as part of that research.
I think that'd be great. Thank
If
you.
that's okay with the board.
Commissioner Marino, you recognize.
Thank you. I know that in one of our discussions about this, there was some, excuse me, hopefully one of these days this will go away. There was some reference made to fence heights and landscape heights, and there was a little bit of inconsistency, and why does it have to be 6 feet? Why does it have to be 8 feet? I would encourage us to make sure that they're all the same and come up with a number that works, whether it's 6 feet or 8 feet. That would be another thing that we should be looking at.
Yes, we have the RVs and the fence heights in our arsenal of changes we need to make, and when we come back with the vehicle up to 16 and that kind of housekeeping, we hope to clarify some of those heights, because there's a very low 4-foot hedge height in the front of people's property, and Rick tells me that's extremely contentious, because I guess people want higher hedges in the front of their house. And you know, in the acreage area, what we heard when we met with the folks out there is that a lot of times the height of the pad is so high, a 4-foot fence is, you know, or a 4-foot hedge is like nominal. So yeah, we'll bundle that in, I think, when we come back with those changes.
I would have no problem with a higher hedge. Thank you.
All right. All right. Anything else on this matter? Yes, Executive Director.
There was talk about beyond the grandfathering, if we get there, other places that they could go. So did I hear direction to staff that we should explore other areas where these uses could locate in the future for
So I
parking?
think what we were saying is we want to look at, I think there's some property that I'm aware of out by ITI, somewhere near ITID actually on an approved road.
Okay.
There's some property, I think county property available that might suffice for a storage for other folks that potentially would not. So I think, yeah, if you're able to do that and bring that back to us as well, that would be.
Okay.
Because nobody's trying to put anybody out of business.
Right. And
Just
we'll
trying
just
to-
add that to the timing of what we are able to bring back and other options. Okay.
Well, if it can work out timing-wise, that's great. If not,
Perfect.
understood that it, you know, may take a little more time. Okay. Anything else on this item? Okay, so we're done with this. All right, moving on. Comments from the Assistant County Attorney.
No comments.
Planning Director. She's gone. Nope. Okay, no comments. Zoning Director. Executive Director.
Just thank you to staff for all the hard work they did. This was a lot of research, and they did a great job. Thank you.
Very good. Assistant County Administrator. Okay, and we'll start with Honor Commissioners. Commissioner Barnett. No comment. Commissioner Woodward.
I'd just like to thank staff for this, thank the community, thank all of my fellow commissioners for the healthy discussion, and I hope we come to a good resolution.
Thank you. Commissioner Marino.
Thank you. Actually, I do. There was a Wall Street Journal article about schools building housing for teachers, and I'm not sure what we have to do with any essential housing that gets built on school district property. I don't think we are part of that permitting process. Is that correct? Let me expand on my. What I'd like to do is I would like to encourage the school district to work with the county If there is an opportunity to do essential services housing for teachers on school district property, I would like to encourage the county and the schools to work together, and this might be some, $200 million housing bond dollars that can get spent. I know that we have a school up in the north end of the county that has more acreage than the school sits on, and it's vacant, that we actually, gardens used to store debris on during hurricanes. But it was in the Wall Street Journal today how other districts around the nation are doing that. So I just want to see if there's a path forward. I like that expression. A path forward with the county and the school district to help and encourage them if we are part of the permitting process. And I'm not sure, because I know with the universities, we're not part of the that's the state of Florida, but school district, I don't know what the permitting process is. So if we could just make sure to give them a shout that we're happy to encourage them with this. And I know it's like our government too. We don't want to give up land because we know we're growing and we can't ever get that land back. But at the end of the day, if we don't give up some land to have some teachers, we don't have teachers for our schools. So I just want to be able to encourage the school district to work with the county. If there's anything we can do, let them know.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This Monday, we'll be celebrating Labor Day. Just want to say happy Labor Day to all the workers and all the people who are here. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Baxter.
I want to thank staff for all your hard work, research, putting this together, making it clear so we could make clear decisions. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. And I don't know if we ever got an answer on timeline on when this is coming back.
Well, next month we have an agritourism workshop, and then the following month there's a lot of October public hearings. So I don't think you might see something till November, but we'll see. But
Do we not have a zoning meeting in September?
We have the zoning meeting in September, but that'll be a mail out in 2 weeks. But we can try to do something in September for some things. But October, I know the agendas are just jam-packed. So if we can't do anything in September agendas, it would have to be probably November.
All right, thank you.
And Lisa, this also has to go to LDRAB as well.
Right, no, well, November's good. So we have a rough estimate of when.
Yeah, not next year.
Okay, thank you. I also want to thank our staff. I want to thank the public. I know this is an important item, not only for you, but for us as well, and for our county. And so I appreciate folks that have emailed us, sharing their opinions, of folks that are able to show up in person to share their opinions and thoughts on this. Still remembering to keep the folks over in the Big Bend area. We don't know exactly how they fared yet.
Cedar Key.
And I think it'll be a little while before we understand that. And of course, the storm now is heading across the state. It's going to cross over, and I think into Georgia, and then out to the coast again. We all have to continue to watch this. Idalia, there is a potential thought that this storm could circle back around and come back again to Florida, which we've seen happen in the past. So everybody keep your eye, make sure your supplies, everybody we're on tax holiday right now, sales tax holiday for hurricane supplies. So please, if you're not prepared, this is a good wake-up call. Make sure you go out, get your supplies, and remember, you don't have to buy bottled water. If you have containers, you can fill up at home. Water coming out of the tap, I'm told, is totally drinkable and consumable by human beings, and I've been doing it pretty much all my life, so I'm still here. And then lastly, turning to you, Mr. Executive or Assistant County Administrator, traffic lights, technology. The fact that we still have nothing, we have not moved 1 inch, to me is unacceptable. We now implemented a new traffic light scheme on Okeechobee, which I understand improves the traffic flow wonderfully when they're moving from the east to the west in the afternoon. But unfortunately, on Sunday afternoon, I was the recipient of 2 cycles to sit through that light, heading southbound on Tamarin, when there was absolutely zero cross traffic. So the fact that we're using technology that can't modify and deal with the change of what's happening on the roadways, it's a clear missed opportunity to improve traffic flow, improve the quality of life for the folks, and cut down on pollution. So you're going to hear this now from me probably every month until something changes and we get some improvements. All right, with that, is there anything else for the good of the order? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.